Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's module. We are going to talk about peace building, and there are 2 extra credit assignments that are possible for you to do if you're interested. And I'm going to get started with the PowerPoint slideshow. Peace building. This is a presentation that I really appreciate doing because I think it is so important in this world. As some of you may know, my grandmother was killed in the Second World War by the Nazis in an air raid in their village, or rather their small city that they lived in Greece. And so I grew up listening to a lot of stories about what happened during the Second World War. And my father, he was from Denmark. They weren't bombed, but they were invaded by the Nazis. So between my mother being in Greece and them being both invaded, occupied, starved, and badly abused by the Nazis, and then hearing about what happened to my dad in Denmark, I just knew that war was a horrible, horrible thing. And I got interested in the peace movement when I was in middle school. And part of the reason why I do study and teach communication is because I think it is a key for creating peace in the world. And that is so important to eliminate suffering and to just build a much more desirable place for all of us to live in. So with that said, I will move into what is this thing we call peace building? So peace building has become a field in and of itself. And it refers to the multi-layered set of organizing efforts to create and maintain peace by addressing the root causes of armed conflict and support local capacity building for conflict management and restitution. So those are fancy words for saying that we want to help people learn how to resolve conflicts peacefully. We want to set up systems so people can do that. And we want to also find ways to help the people who have been hurt by armed conflict. And I'll give you more details about this. So here's some of the specifics of what can be done. Okay, so we can do constructive conflict management. So we can actually bring people together, and you've probably you know about this maybe in the international level because you've probably heard of peace talks. But even at local level, because now a lot of violent conflict is not two countries against each other, but it's people within countries who get into performing extreme acts of violence. And quite a lot of that is organized by large groups and funded sometimes by people who have a lot of money. Another piece of it is trauma healing. So when people have been through war, they are traumatized. And so to heal those traumas, there's psychological and social work and community building. Those are some of the things that help to heal the traumas. There's also a need for sustainable economic development. A lot of the reason that people get recruited to become violent is because they don't have good options in their lives. They don't have ways to make a living. They live in poverty, or they live in situations where life is so hard that joining an extreme violent group, whether it's a gang here in Los Angeles or it's a extremist group in another country, it's the lack of viable options that really is one of the underlying causes for people joining into efforts to be violent. And also a part of the reason they get convinced of that is not only because they have no viable alternatives, but because they get convinced that these enemies that get defined are the reason for their suffering and their family suffering. Another part of peace building is youth empowerment. And so in order to have people get engaged and not be susceptible to being recruited into extreme violence, whether it's a terrorist group or a gang or something else, it's important to empower young people to be able to accomplish goals and do things that they want with their lives that helps them feel satisfied and secure. Another part of peace building in the international arena is gender mainstreaming. And so they found the UN and people who do research in this area have found that um, countries are more productive and they have better governance when you have a good balance of men and women running things. So putting women into leadership. So gender mainstreaming is the trying to create gender equality in the mainstream. And another part of it is social and political reform. So some of the reasons for violence are because of corruption or inequalities and things that really um, either oppress people or create a lot of resentment. So reforming social and political systems so that they're fair, so that there's social justice. And then also when there's been war, a lot of people get displaced and they may be living in refugee camps. They may have gone to other countries and so on. So helping those people come back to where they had to escape from, that's called repatriating people. Um, so those are all some of the activities of peace building. It's not an exhaustive list, but it's some of the major things that are done. And now what I'm going to do is just give you a case study of where there is extreme violence, which is in northern Nigeria and Chad and some other areas up in that region. And there's a terrorist group called Boko Haram, which they have been victimizing many, many people in the northeastern corner of Nigeria, where there is a lot of extreme poverty. The place they originated in Chad, and there's tremendous poverty there, and so they're susceptible to people that that recruit them and get them to engage in these violent acts. So we're going to look at this case study to understand what was happening and then look at what the remedy is and how peace building is trying to help to solve some of those problems that got created by the Boko Haram and their violence. Okay, so this is from a Pulitzer Prize winning article about what's happening in Nigeria from April 2017. It was the lead author was Leslie Roberts. So it's called Nigeria's Invisible Crisis. And the writing is very descriptive. Flying into Manguno, a recently liberated town in a forgotten corner of north of state in northeastern Nigeria, all you can see is a vast expanse of nothingness. There is no horizon, just a haze of sand whipped up by the hot Harmattan winds blowing from the Sahara Desert. No green except for the curious mossy splotches where groundwater rises to the surface. All else is dust. The only signs of farms are the faint outlines of what were once fields etched into the desiccated land. Every so often, the charred remnants of the village come into view. This is what scorched earth looks like, a legacy of more than 8 years of terror by the extremist group Boko Haram, which until recently held the region in a vice. So what the Boko Haram does is go into a region, they kill all the men, they destroy all the farms, the houses, they burn everything to the ground, and they kidnap the women and children. They force the women into marriages. They convert the boys into Boko Haram warriors. And Boko Haram means Western education is a sin. So these people are extreme extremists, and they believe that anything to do with Western culture and Western education is sinful. They are very extreme in their views. And they kill anyone who doesn't share their views. So they kill Muslims and Christians. They'll kill anyone who doesn't want to be part of their organization. They have zero tolerance for any other perspectives. The magazine where I got this article is listed here, and it's also on our website. I've posted as an article, but I got it through our library, so you may have to go to our library to find it if if the link on our website isn't working for you. But there's a lot of detail in the article if you're interested in learning more. Some more information from the article here is the horror of it. The world began to wake up to the full horror of that legacy last year as the Nigerian army started ousting the insurgents from their strongholds here in Borno and two adjoining states of Yobe and Adamawa. I went to Adamawa back in 2014 to actually do a presentation at a conference there on peace building, youth empowerment, and gender, how to reduce gender violence. So these are some states where they were. So this article was written in 2017. So it was 2016 when the world started to wake up to it. And I remember hearing about 200 girls who were kidnapped. And I have found out that that is nothing compared to the total amount of women who have been kidnapped since this started. So as the survivors began straggling out, the few humanitarian workers already on the ground were shocked at what they saw: millions sick and near starvation, fresh graves that hinted at an untold number of dead. We started seeing the state of the people coming out and got a sense of what the magnitude of the crisis might be, says John Agbor, UNICEF's head of health for Nigeria in Abuja. That's the capital of Nigeria. So here's what one of the refugee camps looks like, where there are just so many people crammed together. And here's a group of women, survivors of the violence, and their children. Some of the consequences now summarized here: 8.1 million people in need of humanitarian assistance. That means they don't have food, they don't have water, they have no sanitation, there's a lot of diseases. I mean, this is a dire, dire crisis here. There's 1.8 million people internally displaced. So that means they've been displaced from their homes in Nigeria. And then there's 5.1 million suffering from malnutrition. So the uprooted are crammed into squalid camps and towns already too destitute to deal with this influx. The food, water, and the sanitation are scarce or non-existent, leaving few options other than open defecation. So there is no toilets here, okay? The camps and slums provide a perfect breeding ground for disease, and in a deadly cycle, malnutrition renders children more susceptible to infection and less able to fight it. Epidemics of measles and malaria rage, and polio has resurfaced. Child mortality is off the charts, 2, 3, 4 times the emergency threshold, says Marco Ola, a pediatric specialist with Médecins Sans Frontières, which is to us known as Doctors Beyond Borders. And here's a makeshift hospital that they've created for some of the sick people at the camp. And this puts a little into perspective what we're talking about here. A child on the verge of severe acute malnutrition, the red zone. So you see here the tape. Okay, so here's the red zone. So this child's arm is so tiny that they're in a danger of being in extreme or severe acute malnutrition. Okay, and 500,000 children are in this danger zone. 500,000. So the diseases from living in these squalid conditions, not having sanitation, being malnutritioned, and so on. Okay, so malaria has been the biggest killer, accounting for about half of all deaths, but acute respiratory infections and diarrhea are now vying for a top spot. It is hard to rank human tragedies, but by all accounts, this is one of the worst on the African continent today. It is really, really, really bad for a lot of people. It is a crisis of great severity and magnitude, says Jorge Castilla of the Health Emergencies Program of the World Health Organization, which is in Geneva, Switzerland. Yet it remains remarkably unrecognized and hugely underfunded, leaving aid workers struggling with how to deliver life-saving interventions when the needs are so great and the resources so paltry. When I ask people if they know about this, so few people do. It's not covered very well by the mainstream media. some more information. Okay, just this weekend, there was another outbreak. There was another attack. So international journalists covered this attack. 110 people were slaughtered and more women were kidnapped. And so here is a website if you want to see more about that article. So this is an ongoing problem. It's not going away. There's also extreme gender violence. Okay, so with the activities of the Boko Haram in northeastern Nigeria, it's resulted in 50,000 widows. So 50, that's because their husbands were killed, right? And then they become rape victims. And according to the Premium Times of Nigeria, these women are the wives or sex slaves, and most of these women suffer from trauma and discrimination resulting from their forceful association with Boko Haram. In many instances, these women are now fully responsible for their family's well-being due to the loss of their spouse, so they don't have any help anymore, and they have to raise the children. So now that we've heard the sad story about what's happening, I want to now bring in a model peace-building organization, the Center for Sustainable Development and Education in Africa, who I have been acquainted with since 2009, and I have done volunteer work for this organization, and I still do when I try to do what I can. So this organization engages in those activities that I was telling about. They help with, they do empowerment. They teach conflict resolution and help set up mediation and conflict resolution programs. They do youth empowerment programs to help youth become leaders in their communities and try to recruit youth into constructive activities instead of being recruited into destructive kinds of and violent activities. They do women's empowerment, and they believe strongly in gender equity. They do things, they know a lot about how to prevent violence, which is through sustainable development. So in order for people to not be susceptible to being recruited to be violent, they have to have options. So finding ways to help people develop their abilities to work, occupational training or job training is incorporated into this, and then trying to see how you can help communities set up ways that people in that community can make money. So that's a combination of activities. They're also involved with trying to create better governance. And I was involved in training leaders in interpersonal communication, conflict resolution, and mediation skills. So I have gone to Nigeria. I've also coordinated bringing some of their leaders to this country to do training in this country. So these are some of the things that they do. So I put their web address on here. So if you want to look up more information about what they do, it's here for you to see. And on the website, there's lists of the projects, and then you can see reports of what the outcomes were of the projects. I can tell you the organization is very successful. They get grants from the United States Department. They get grants from US aid. They get grants from the UN. They get grants from the EEU. And they get grants from some foundations that fund peace building and development in places where there's really high need. So the other way that they've been trying to raise funds is through a platform, an international platform called Global Giving. So they have their project listed there. So this is the website for that project. And I am going to go to this project now and give you more details about it. So this is the website for the project, which is Empower Victims of Boko Haram Violence in Nigeria. And as you can see, it's sponsored by the Center for Sustainable Development and Education in Africa. And here is a summary of what they do, okay? So this project will renovate and equip a skills acquisition center in Himeta, northeastern Nigeria, providing psychosocial support, mentoring, and livelihoods training for financial independence to 1,000 rape victims and widows traumatized by the violent activities of Boko Haram and other insurgent groups. So, as I said, peace building involves sustainable development. And so by building this acquisition skill center in this area of northeastern Nigeria, which is where a lot of the Boko Haram activities have occurred, they are training these women who have survived. Most of these women have escaped. They're training these women, and they actually interviewed the women to see what were the kinds of occupations that they'd like to have, that they believe they could do well to support their families. So the two occupations that they chose were either to be cattle raisers, so they would, raise cattle and then sell it, make money from those sales, or they would be tailors and they would make clothes. And I have some samples of the clothes that they make. Okay, so they make shirts and blouses, and these are kind of typical types of things that people wear in Nigeria. They wear these outfits. They're very colorful, and so I have a lot of those. And so those are the things that they make. And if they are in the sewing projects, and there's other things, and you can see more on the website of some of their the things that they've made. So those are the two occupations. They wanted to be cattle raisers. They wanted to be tailors. If they want to be tailors, at the end of the program, they give them a sewing machine too. And give them fabric so they can start their business, and then they're on their own, and then they can start making it and selling it, and they can support their families on that. If they're cattle raisers, they give them their initial cattle. And another unique part of the project is that they give them an enclosure to keep the cattle in, because another problem that generates violence in that part of the world is that the cattle raisers, who have historically been nomadic and traveled around with their cattle goes onto farms and eats the farmers' crops, and then it creates conflict between cattle raisers and farmers. So to prevent that kind of violence, they're also getting land for them with enclosures, and they're giving them cows, they're giving them food, and then they can start. And then once they sell a first group of cows, then they can buy more and then keep going, and they'll be able to support their families on that. The psychological social support, so they have psychologists working with them and helping them overcome the trauma through things like the discussion groups, singing, dancing, things that try to help people feel good, talking about what happened to them, thinking positive about the future, and so on. So lots of ways that they have, they're trying to help them recover from the trauma, and it's an important part of it. And then they continue to provide support and mentoring. And this is how they can turn the lives around of these people who were victims and are survivors of this horrible type of violence. Okay. So as you can see here, 50,000 women, and probably now there's been more affected since this was first written. So the goal of this project is to try to help 1,000 of them. So this is seen as a really important project. Right now, there's 178 women who have gone through the program and are financially independent because of the program. And so the long-term impact is that these people will be able to arise out of poverty and provide for their families, and hopefully be good role models. And they are also going to incorporate in conflict resolution training when things settle down, and they can do that, because right now with COVID, they can't bring outside people in. And so that's an extra challenge they have. I mean, we think we have it bad because we're locked in our houses. Imagine if you don't even have a house and then you're just stuck in one of those camps. Yeah, so things are even worse for them. And COVID is hitting Nigeria in a big way too. Okay, so here's that organization again that I told you about. They're the ones that are sponsoring this particular project. Okay, um, and so even though things are pretty horrible, um, there's hope. There's always hope, and things are getting better. So if you want to participate in this project and help out, you can help be a fundraiser by soliciting donations from people that you know who care about helping people like this. Okay, so before I get to that, let me just say that if you want any more information, see where it says reports, you can click on reports and then get information about the specific project. So here's that center that they've created to help to bring these people together and provide them services. So here's the center, and and so here's a report. So every time they have some people, every time they make progress, they put out a report, and I think they put out quarterly reports. Okay, so here's some cattle raisers. Okay, and there's some training going on here. I know there's also some reports where you can see the women that learn how to sew. So let's look for some more. Well, that's the most recent report. Here's some photos. And so here's the women that are learn how to sew. Well, actually, they're taking notes there. Sorry. Here's some sewing going on here. So here's some sewing, and those are the kind of sewing machines that they're going to be giving them. Okay. Here's a little dress, cute little dress. Here's some more people in the sewing. Okay. So you can take a look around and see some of this film here is about the project, and you can watch it, information about the project. Now I want to show you, if you want to participate, and as you know, there's extra credit for this. If in order to get extra credit, what you have to do is get somebody to donate $10. Okay, so you have to be able to explain well enough what's going on, why it's important, and ask them to donate. And all they need to donate is $10 for it to work for this project. So there is a matching. There's a matching grant drive going on right now. So between 9 p.m. on Monday and 8 p.m. Tuesday, that's the Giving Tuesday hours, there is a special matching fund. So for all the organizations that have people donate at least $10, it has to be at least $10, then that amount of money is going to get matched by this global giving platform, because they're an organization and they're trying to support people's fundraising. So if you give this amount, and it can get like 3 people to give this amount, then that will get matched. Okay, see, it says 2 times. Okay, so what the person that you solicit to donate needs to put their full name. Okay, and they can put a card number or PayPal. If they don't put their name, then we won't be able to know who they are. So the executive director of the organization, he has a list of, as people donate, it shows up on his end, on where he has access to the website. It shows all the names. So if you get a donation have the person write their name in, and then give me the name that they submitted for that donation. And then Theophilus can check. He's the executive director. Theophilus checks, he sees that they donated, and then he tells me, and then you can get the 10 points extra credit for getting a $10 donation. Okay. So that's how it's very easy how it works. But the hard part is explaining it to people so they'll want to donate. That's the part that's hard. So you have to understand this and be able to articulate it well and use your interpersonal skills. Listen to people, pay attention, answer their questions, be supportive no matter what they say. So use good interpersonal communication skills, and that's what helps you be an effective fundraiser. And then understanding the project and why it's important. All of those things help you. Okay. So in this time where there's um, so so much strife and so much need in the world, I know that it's hard getting donations because we have people in this country who are food insecure. So I understand if people don't want to donate because they're donating to other things, or they're having a hard time with their own lives with so many people having lost their jobs and so on, right? I know these are hard times, but I also know that these people, they have it worse than most people on the planet. And so when we help them, we are not only helping some individuals, but we're helping with the whole peace building enterprise, because this becomes a model. The person who is the executive director of the CSDEA, and he's the one who actually brainstormed this idea to do this and got this project off the ground and recruited a lot of people to help. He speaks at the UN about 3 or 4 times a year, but because of COVID, he can't travel. Nobody can travel. So there haven't been any conferences where he normally speaks, but his goal is to have this project be successful, to become a model that he can then tell people at the UN about. And then he's hoping that there'll be like the UN or some other organization that will want to engage in some sustained funding, because it's hard to do fundraising this way, although this has become a new way to do fundraising. So you may have already done this kind of fundraising with uh, GoFundMe, for example. Lots of people have done that. Yeah. Okay. So this is what it is. If you have any questions at all about it, then you can just let me know and I'd be happy. So just give me a call, give me a text, give me a call. Happy to talk to anybody, help you out with it. Okay. But basically, you just need to know enough about the project to explain it, then ask people to donate, direct them how to get to the website, tell them they need to put their name in. The name that they give here is a name that you need to put down, so that then when I get the list of names of who donated, then I'll see who were people that you solicited to give the donation, and I'll see you were effective, you had great interpersonal skills and persuasion skills, and you got people to donate. Okay, if you have any questions, let me know. I'm happy to answer any questions. And with that, then I'll see you in class. See you Wednesday or Thursday if you're a Thursday person. Okay, bye-bye.